You know, I think I'm off to a pretty good start in 2023. I want to start this video by giving a huge thank you to my top tier Wizard Master patrons. Thank you Chris, Nico, Cody, Sharon, Patrick, Leslie, Doug, Mendelin, Ystitch, Twaney, Spyro, Reading Rainbow, Mike Molman, and Aaron. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and as always guys, we're here to talk some SSF books, but before we get into that, make sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button, as it does help the channel grow on that march to 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. And while you're doing all that, make sure to check the description box down below for the link to the Wizardly Duo Discord, as well as links to all my social media, including information about my Patreon. Speaking of my Patreon, I just want to give a special shout out to 3 new patrons. Thank you, Shad, Nina, and Tomei. Thank you so much. Alright guys, so it's been an interesting month because I mentioned that march to 5,000 subscribers. Well, that's the new goal because we crossed 3,000 subscribers. If you missed the 3,000 subscriber live show, you can check it right here. I believe it's going to show up right there. I did the one chip challenge by Pocky. I think I did fairly well with it. I was joined by a bunch of great friends. Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, Alan from the Library of Alexandria, who just said Kubono to me, to Who's Good, my buddy Nico, Tori, Kayla, Sarah Reed's there at the end. Like, just thank you to everybody who showed up in the comments. It was a lot of fun. It was spicy. It was more dusty, that chip, than anything else. And as it is the end of the month, I also want to give a huge thank you to Jimmy Nuts for showing up for episode 2 of Wizardly Ramblings. We had a great time. And yeah, guys, we are 2 very different readers, so it was a very engaging and interesting discussion. You can check that out right there. Alright, now I said I've been wanting to kind of cut back on what I've been reading this year. I didn't want to do 20, 25 books a month. And I think I've done a pretty good job. We're sitting at right at 13 books, which is fairly good. Now, some housekeeping that I've got to do is that I did a small challenge with my booktube big sister, Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative, where I had her select 4 books for me, and you would think I'd have them all laid out. And of course, I don't. 2 of those were physical, and then 2 of those were digital. And of those 2 that were physical, we did The Last Smile and Sunder City, and The Awakening Fire. Basically, I said, hey, recommend 4 books to me that you think I'm going to like. This is what she came up with for these 2. There was also The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless, and Ungodly by Braden Reddick. Ungodly being kind of a modern horror story with kind of almost, what was that one horror movie? It was like one of the found footage ones. It's kind of what it reminded me of. It had this kind of like Blair Witch found like footage thing going on, but of course it's not found footage because we're following 2 characters as they like try to struggle to survive in a town gone crazy. It was interesting. It was good. I really liked it. There were a couple things that didn't quite make a whole lot of sense to me. A couple continuation errors. But aside from that, very, very solid read. Very enjoyable. Very accessible prose. And I actually read in the back of the book that the author wasn't even going to publish the book, and I'm very glad that he decided to do so, because I do think it is worth the read. And then when it came to the audio that I had for The Children of Gods and Fighting Men, there we go, it's a longer title, so I kind of struggle with those sometimes. I really, really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5, only because I also read A Game of Thrones, which I'll talk about here in a minute, this month as well, and one of the characters, or one of the main POVs of that book, is basically just Irish Cersei, which is, you know, when you read two similar characters in the same month, like, it's going to be one or the other. Usually it's that way with me. I feel like if I'd read this a couple months separated from A Game of Thrones, it would have gotten at least another half star. Very good. A lot of intrigue, a lot of history, a lot of anger, a lot of great ideas are discussed within The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. And then, speaking of these 2, Last Mile in Center City, Fetch Phillips, I really enjoyed this one. This is kind of like an Angmor Porkian city, without feeling like Terry Pratchett's writing. So, like, I get why they say the illegitimate love child of somebody in Terry Pratchett. Like, the city feels like an Angmor Pork, but it's not. but the history and the flashbacks that Fetch Phillips kind of goes through, and we kind of discover his history as he kind of bumbles around trying to solve an issue, because Fetch Phillips is somebody for hire. He's kind of like a Dresden clone, almost, where he's kind of like a private dick, if you will, and you can kind of hire him and things of that nature. I really, really enjoyed this one. This one got a 4 out of 5. I've been told if I enjoyed the first one, I'm in for a very special treat with books 2 and 3, which I'm going to be continuing the series immediately following. So, yeah, you can look forward to that. Then I read The Awakening Fire by Cassidy Faylane. And this one is very interesting. Essentially, we've got 3 individuals vying for a throne. And they each have different motivations. One, there's like a bit of a destiny, a little bit of a fallen country. There's a rebellion. There's a struggle for this throne, because all 3 people have a legitimate claim to the throne through different avenues. And that leads to some misunderstandings and some like seductions of power and things of that nature. Like, one is like from a previous king, one is the king of the people, and one is, you know, the current king has chosen him as an heir, even though the current king killed the previous king, and so then, but left that family line going. So that we've got 3 individuals vying for one throne, and it is just chaos. One thing I will say about this is there are some characters in here who are incredibly dark. There is some sexual deviancy within the book. There is, I mean that character is just meant to make you go, ugh! He's a very dark individual. That said, though, it was a very enjoyable read. Again, another 4 out of 5 read. So I'm batting probably 4 out of 5 range for all 4 of those books that Leslie recommended. So I had a good time with pretty much all of them. Now, I mentioned that I had finally read A Game of Thrones, and I believe I've got it scheduled to where you have already seen this video. I'll pop it right there if I have this scheduled correctly. If not, I just made a very weird gesture towards a empty part of the screen, and you're wondering why I'm rambling. Anyway, I read A Game of Thrones, and I am changing my stance on it. The first 30% of this book was not a enjoyable experience for me. Basically, I've been a Game of Thrones naysayer for a while, and if you want my full thoughts, watch the video, because it's not spoiler, but it's not non-spoiler either. It's just kind of my impression of book and what I expect from the TV show, having watched the TV show and all that. That's all right there in the video. But I had a more enjoyable time once we kind of got further into the story. Overall, I really enjoyed the lore. I enjoy the character work. I enjoy the history. I enjoy the characterizations and just everything, the way these people interact and the politics. I really loved all of that. There's just one element in this story that really bothers me. And if that had been removed, this would have been a god tier book read for me. So I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to be continuing the series in February with, I believe that's Clash of Kings is book 2. I'm not a Song of Ice and Fire person yet. So I think it's Clash of Kings. I haven't checked though. I then, of course, read Lessons Never Learned by Rob J. Hayes. This is War Eternal book 2. And we are back here with Iskara post-Pit. And let me tell you what, like, Iskara continues to delight. And what I mean by delight is she's such an interesting character. Because, again, the POV structure of this is we're being recounted a tale from an older Iskara where she'll literally just say, and I was dumb. And I should have known better. And this person still thinks I'm stupid for doing these kind of things even today. Like, there's just all that sort of stuff. This kind of splits into an additional POV. Some events that happen in book 1 cause a split. And it's very interesting. Again, this is a book 2. I don't really want to go into it. This is a 4.5 out of 5 for me. I'm really enjoying the War Eternal. If you like coming of age with a dark, dark twist, Rob J. Hayes is probably unparalleled in the self-pub community when it comes to that sort of story. So yes, very, very good. I then read Queen of Bedlam, Matthew Corbett book 2 by Robert McCammon. This is my second Robert McCammon book. I'm going to be continuing this series again with book 3, Mr. Slaughter, in February, because I gave this one, I believe, it was either 4.5. I think it's another 4.5 out of 5 read. Again, it feels like every one of these books is going to have that one disturbing scene. And of course, they got me again in this one. It wasn't super bad, but like, I was like, But here, this kind of picks up 3 years after, what's it called? Speaks the Nightbird. There we go. I completely blanked. Speaks the Nightbird takes place 3 years after Speaks the Nightbird, and we've gone from Fountainroyal all the way to New York, and we are in the early years of New York. I believe it is now 1702 in America, and Matthew is trying to figure out kind of where he fits in life. Does he want to continue in the legal profession? And things of that nature. And then we've got, of course, another serial killer on the loose in New York. And it's a lot of fun to watch him kind of try and figure out what's going on, because we've still got some unresolved issues from book 1 that we're still dealing with. And it's a great analyzation of Matthew Corbett's story. If you're loving, American historical fiction and you're haven't read this yet, please do yourself a favor, pick it up. I then read The Crew by Sadir S. Samir. I've done a dedicated book review for this one. Check that in the description box down below. But this one was, in that review, I said zany 15 times, which is probably 6 or 7 times too many. Don't get me wrong, it is a zany and fun book. But man, I had a lot of fun following Varkad. There we go, that's his name. Following Varkad. And I believe I kept saying adjudicator. It's educator. I don't know why I was adding the J. It's educator, Andrew. Educator. Not adjudicator, but he's an educator, which makes a whole lot more sense in retrospect now that I'm thinking about how that religion and lifestyle works. Varkad being an educator makes a whole lot more sense rather than an adjudicator. I don't know why I said that in that review, but this is kind of like a rebellion getting the band together. And there's just lots of funny banter. Please check the review out. It was a lot of fun. I ended up giving this one also a 4 out of 5. So I had a lot of 4.5s and 4 out of 5s this month. So not too bad. But we do have a couple 5-star reviews. We've got Call of the Bone Ships. This is Tide Child Book 2. And again, very, very good. This kind of does a structure change that I thought was interesting. Because basically, what we're doing on Tide Child is we'll be either following Joran Twiner or we'll be following Lucky Maze. And then it'll get to a point, an event will happen, and then we'll backtrack. It'll say what this person was doing while this was happening. And then we kind of get both perspectives of that same event. Or not the same event. Basically, what each character was doing at the exact same time. And then they kind of converge to a single point and the story moves forward from there. Very interesting. Again, I waffle on this one because book 1 was so good because it had this such great progression of story. This one's a 4.5 or a 5. It's still a very recent read for me, so I need to kind of sit with my thoughts on this one and decide where I'm going to kind of come down. Right now, it's a 4.5 or a 5. And I think that's really going to determine on how book 5 handles the events of the second book. Because, I don't know if it happens to you guys, and please feel free to let me know in the comments down below. It's when you, finish a book or a trilogy, and it makes the previous book even better. I think that could possibly happen right here. So, yes, we got Call of the Bone Ships. So good. I'm finally trying to, wrap up some sequels. One of the best books I've read in 2 years. And I've got a review for this one coming out, I believe, this week. And that is Janie Wirt's Cycle of Fire, specifically Storm Warden. A criminally underrated book, in my opinion, on Goodreads. It's only got a 3.95 or something like that. I'll give this 5 out of 5 all day long. All day long. Because, frankly, guys, this book, it has such beautiful prose. It's got great, great characterization. With Anskier and Emion and Tion and Thorgas. All of these characters are they just fly off the page and come alive. Some of them are a bit caricatures of what it means to be evil, but that's explained. It's a sci-fantasy book, which is it's giving you nautical fantasy, nautical fantasy, nautical fantasy, sci-fi, nautical fantasy, sci-fi, and you're oh, it's such a beautiful blend because, it's jarring when it first happens because you don't see it coming. And then once it finally happens, you're like, you know what? This blends beautifully together because it kind of makes a bit of sense. A lot of the times, I miss when people say, magic is just science that people don't understand. Well, that's kind of what this is. And I absolutely loved Storm Warden, to the point where, like, I'm going to read all of this, and then I've got to ride Hell's Chasm, and then there's a few other standalones, and then it's on to the Empire Trilogy and Wars of Light and Shadow, because I think Janie Wirtz is going to be a new favorite author of mine. So yes, we read that. And then Springtide Harvest by J.D. Mitchell. I do have a dedicated book review for this coming out sometime in February. Guys, this one is a lot of fun. This is a 4.5 out of 5. And what I mean by that is this is... How do I explain what this is? This is a quest story. This is a traditional, old school, like 90s quest story told in a more like modern era. Basically, we've got two characters. One's a grifter, and one was raised on the tales of his grandfather being like this great orc slayer. And so he's Eskel, son of Eskel, and then like his name is Haskell. Yeah, Haskell. And he's just like, oh yeah, like, my father stinks because he, like, runs a business and he's nothing like my grandfather. And I'm going to take my grandfather's sword and I'm going to go seek adventure out and I'm going to join the Questers Guild and I'm going to go do dungeons and stuff. Like, if you like D&D and the aspect of, like, creating a character and then going and doing quests, that's what Haskell is doing. That's exactly what Haskell is doing. And it's told with a lot of humor, but it's also got a nice dark twist to it. Very, very interesting story. This is Springtide Harvest, by the way, if I didn't say, by J.D. Mitchell. You can get more of my thoughts on this when I do the dedicated book review. And then, let's see, have I forgotten anything? Yes, I forgot one book that I completed, and that is The Tales of the Border Knight by A.R. Witham. I can't forget this story because it is more key mark. This is a novella. Basically, A.R. took the Noble 7 kind of novella that he had written. He reworked it. He fine-tuned some things. He added about 3,000 words to the story, fleshed out some characters, trimmed some stuff off that wasn't quite working, and just overall polished it up as kind of a thank you for people who have just been supporting him and doing Keymark. Guys, like, I could read Keymark all the time. Again, another 4 out of 5. But yeah, this has been a really good reading month. And once again, Editing Andrew is back because, of course, I had all those books to talk about, and I forgot to talk about 2 of them. I did my reread of Dead House Gates, Malisand Book of the Fallen. I enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars last time. It got another 5 stars this time. Nothing surprising there. But I also read Patrick Samfire's Shadow of a Dead God, which is so good, and I will be doing a video kind of on detectives for hire in the fantasy setting here in the near future around that video. So yes, I also read those 2. Very good. I might even do a dedicated book review for it, but I haven't filmed it yet. So back to the video! And the only other thing that I kind of read, I read this both in December and in January to kind of just close this out. We have got James Clavell's Shogun, specifically parts 1 and 2, I believe. I think I'm on part 3 now. Yeah. So book 3. This is broken up into 6 books. This is part of like a read-along that is crossing like the next 3 months. So yeah, this won't be done till March. Let me just say that if it continues to be this good, this is going to be 5 stars. This book is heavy. Ooh, hefty. Wimpy. Anyway, I don't know when. Sorry, the 90s kind of just jumped out and bit me. But yeah, that said, guys, I'm loving this. Great fish out of water story. It's really, really darn good. Let me know in the comments down below how your January has gone. And that's all I've really got for you guys. So till next time, peace out. Stay magical. Bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.